Welcome to Beneath the Bible, where we're helping you dig deeper and uncover the world beneath the sacred book. Today we're going to do something a little bit different than what we usually do. We're going to look at one specific artifact, that bowl on the video thumbnail. What does it have to do with the Bible? Well, on the surface, absolutely nothing. But we want to take a deep dive into the artifact and the imagery on it and see if maybe there's something of value there for understanding the Bible. Now, why in the world would we do that? Well, most archaeology takes place outside of Israel and outside the land of the Bible. Even most of the archaeology that goes on in the land of the Bible has very little to do with the Bible directly. So that means we have a huge corpus of artifacts and material that archaeologists study, but very little that's directly relatable to the Bible. Archaeology is its own discipline with its own goals and standards, so that's great. But what does it mean for people who are more interested in how archaeology relates to the Bible? Is this all just superfluous stuff that doesn't help us? Well, we don't think so. And to show you why, we're going to take an artifact from outside the biblical world, in this case from the island of Cyprus, and we're going to see how it helps us understand the world of the Bible. We're going to tag team this one with Philip talking about the artifact and me seeing how this artifact relates to the world of the Bible. Let's dig in.
This is a silver bowl that is currently in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. It is part of the Cesnola collection. Luigi Palmo di Cesnola was a real character. He acquired a large amount of artifacts from the island of Cyprus in the mid to late 1800s when he served as consul for the United States on the island. Like many of the artifacts that are housed in the Western world's great museums, this artifact would likely qualify as looted by modern standards. Proper permits may have been issued, but it also took the right palms being greased and export papers being pushed through for all to end up in New York. The original context and provenance of this bowl are murky at best. For example, this bowl is part of the so-called Kourion collection. Now, I'm fairly familiar with Kourion since I've excavated there, so I can tell you that many of the objects in the Kourion collection are not actually from Kourion, but maybe from the southern coast of Cyprus. In fact, this bowl has two inscriptions from two different owners, and the latter one says, "I am the bull of Timocrates," and the earlier inscription says, "I am the bull of Acastor, king of Paphos." So it seems unlikely this was Kourion, probably closer to Paphos seems more likely to me. The bowl itself is really quite small. It measures only about 7 inches across and an inch or so high, making it easy enough to hold in a single hand. Since we don't have the original fine context, it's hard to say how it would have originally been used. The inscriptions indicate it was an heirloom, passed on between at least 2 generations. The high quality of the craftsmanship and decorations also point to it being a luxury good. The best guess is that it was used at banquets or more likely used to offer gifts at temples or sanctuary sites. Reliefs from Assyria show kings holding bowls that were perhaps similar to this example. In these reliefs, the kings are clearly in ritualistic scenes. The connection of the offering bowl with ritual and cult seems pretty clear. So that may be a good parallel with this particular bowl, although there are different interpretations of the meaning of all of the scenes. As it is, it's unclear where the bowl was found, and it's not clear where the bowl was originally made. Glenn Marco has studied these bowls and suggests there's a common artistic heritage for this bowl and several others like it found in Cyprus, Italy, and elsewhere in the Mediterranean basin. He believes they share a common Phoenician or Levantine artistic background, but it's not clear where they were made and who made them. They may have been made by itinerant artists who traveled and made the bowls in the same style but in different locations. They may have all been made in Phoenicia and exchanged in trade around the Mediterranean, or they could have been taken as part of war loot and made their way around the Mediterranean that way. We simply don't know. The dating of this artifact is a bit more secure. This particular bowl is dated to between 725 and 675 BC, or during what is called the Cypro-Archaic period, the middle phase of the Cypriot Iron Age. This corresponds to the Iron II period in Israel and overlaps with the reigns of the biblical kings Ahaz, Hezekiah, and Manasseh.
Now, other than being contemporary with the biblical world, there are no direct links between this artifact and the Bible. But we'll take a closer look and see if there are any connections that might be there. First, let's look at the decoration inside the bowl.
This artistic style here is a somewhat odd mixture of Assyrian, Egyptian, and Phoenician. This is not uncommon in luxury goods to mix and match influences.
Even today, markers of luxury include drinking French wine, driving a German car, wearing an Italian suit, and using a Swiss watch, all things that I know nothing about.
But the usage of foreign influences results in some things being lost in translation. For example, the hieroglyphics which show up here are gibberish. They don't say anything intelligible. But hieroglyphics and Egyptian imagery were markers of royalty and luxury, so they were mimicked, and sometimes in the mimicry, the original cultural meaning isn't carried over. Although this bowl was found in Cyprus, it doesn't have many clearly Cypriot artistic markers. Cyprus had its own distinct artistic tradition and style during this period. There are hundreds of ceramic statues ranging in size from miniature to over life size that were offered at sanctuary sites all over the island, perhaps the same context that this bowl was used in. And these statues are made in a distinctly Cypriot style, and there are even discernible stylistic differences between cities that reflect either artisan workshops or even urban stylistic preferences. But in the bowl, we don't see any of these characteristic Cypriot stylings. And we can see 3 bands of decoration. In the center, there's a deity with 4 wings stabbing a lion. Around him are 2 Egyptian-style horse falcons. The second band has a lion standing over a fallen man, which is an Egyptian motif used to show the victorious pharaoh. Next to this are 2 cartouches and a sphinx with the double crown of Egypt. There are then scenes of bulls fighting, following one another, and then a suckling calf and cow, all separated by cypress trees. Finally, there's a hunting scene where the lion over the man is present again, but behind him is an archer, and before him is a hunter with a spear. The outer band shows a man dressed in a traditional Assyrian style, stabbing a griffin. Moving around the bowl is a warrior guarding a man, styled as an Egyptian king, striking captives before an approving falcon-headed deity, likely Ra-Haraxi. This is followed by another man stabbing a fallen griffin. There is a winged goddess, perhaps Isis, standing between 2 highly stylized sacred trees. Moving around, we see sacred trees guarded by sphinxes, goats, and griffins. In the final scene, we see a warrior wearing a lion skin fighting a lion.
Okay, so what, if anything, does this have to do with the Bible? Well, maybe not a lot, but we think there's some interesting stuff going on in this bowl that may provide helpful background for the Bible. Let's look again at this bowl. Now, first off, we know that the date of this bowl is the late 8th century. It's contemporary with kings like Hezekiah and Manasseh. It was made when Assyrian kings like Sargon II, Sennacherib, and Esarhaddon were ruling. This was an active time in the composition history of the Bible. We even see this in the Bible itself. Proverbs 25 indicates that during the reign of Hezekiah, the Proverbs of Solomon were copied and likely added to. Proverbs and probably other books began to coalesce into forms that we would recognize around this time. So looking at this bowl and its iconography may be helpful because if there was a shared cultural world, it's this world that's likely to appear in the Bible.
When we look at the bowl, we see there's a mix and match of foreign influences. It has an Assyrian-style supernatural figure, Egyptian gods and kings, and again, this mixing and matching isn't entirely foreign to us. Items from various cultures around the world are seen even today as markers of luxury.
When we look at the Bible, Solomon contracts with Phoenician architects and artisans to build the temple in Jerusalem. Now, even though Solomon predates this artifact, we can see that all throughout this time period, Phoenicians were seen as tastemakers and trendsetters. If you wanted something made in the finest style, you called the Phoenicians.
In the center, we see a winged figure fighting a lion. Lions carry a lot of symbolic baggage in the ancient world, and one connection is with kingship. We see kings fighting lions, for example, in these Assyrian wall reliefs. But kings fight lions because the king was the god's representative on earth, and the kings also fought lions, an image you see elsewhere in Near Eastern art. That's what we see here. The wings and cap on the figure point to it being a supernatural figure engaged in combat with a lion.
Now, interestingly, we don't really see the kings of Israel fighting lions. We do see David in 1 Samuel 17 saying that he has killed a lion, something that we should certainly see as a claim towards kingship. But that's not really what's happening in this bowl. The god is seen as a lion killer, not a king. Now, while it's a bit more subtle, we can also see Yahweh depicted as a lion slayer in the Bible, particularly in the book of Ezekiel. For example, in Ezekiel 32, the king of Egypt is likened to a lion, and God promises he will slay him. Now, in that passage, God says he will use a net, not a sword like we see in the bowl. We also see Yahweh as a hunter of enemy kings in Ezekiel 12 and 17, where he again uses a net, leading some scholars to see this as a lion hunter motif.
Moving on, we see the hunting scene. This certainly calls to mind any number of hunting scenes we see in the Bible. Psalm 11 comes to mind, for example. Beyond this, we see several stylized trees, 5 in total. Parallels to the stylized sacred tree exist throughout the ancient world, from the Bronze Age into the Iron Age and beyond. The Assyrian sacred tree has long defied easy and consistent interpretation, but it appears in reliefs, notably from the reign of Ashurnasirpal II. We also see similar depictions of trees in Israelite art, such as at Kuntila Ajrud or on the Ta'anak Colt stand, which we'll cover in another video soon. It appears on Israelite seals such as these, which Diana Edelman has suggested may be depictions of a tree of wisdom.
The most obvious parallel to these trees are with the trees in the Garden of Eden. There we see both the tree of life and the tree of wisdom, and sacred tree imagery is incredibly common in the ancient world. We see the tree of life even show up again in the book of Revelation. Even the pattern of composite creatures around a tree is explicitly mentioned in Ezekiel when he describes his vision of a rebuilt temple. See Ezekiel 41, verse 18.
We also see a lot of composite creatures here, mostly griffins and sphinxes. These composite creatures appear in many places throughout the ancient world. And believe it or not, there's a fair amount of work on the griffin fight motif in Cypriot art, where it likely depicts a guardian spirit or hero figure who overcame a griffin in the course of his adventures. The Phoenician god Melkart, whom the Greeks borrowed from for their mythic narratives of Heracles, is often cited as a possible identity for the griffin slayer. Melkart is often cited as the figure seen here, who is wearing a lion skin in his combat with a lion. This may be more familiar to people in the story of Heracles and the Nemean lion. This motif later came to be used for other heroes and kings who were depicted with lion skins or lion helmets, like Alexander the Great on these coins.
Composite creatures also show up in the Bible. Cherubim and seraphim are often understood as these kinds of composite creatures, perhaps not unlike these griffins, rather than the pudgy angels that you see on Hallmark cards. In Israelite personal seals, we see numerous different griffins, including a griffin being killed in a similar way as on this bowl. So it's clear that the Israelites knew the griffin and used it freely in their own art. In the Bible, as here with the griffins, we see the composite creatures like the cherubim as guardians of sacred spaces. In Genesis, they guard the entrance to Eden, which held the Israelites' sacred trees. And here we see griffins guarding a sacred tree. There's even a parallel for the Melkart figure. The god of Tyre, Baal, is in later texts linked with Melkart. Some scholars have suggested the Baal introduced by Jezebel, who was a Tyrian princess, was an early iteration of Melkart. Now that's a possibility, even if it's not entirely likely. The Baal introduced by Jezebel is more likely to be the storm god Baal. But scholars have linked the lion-killing hero with superhuman strength of Samson with Melkart and Heracles. Now, there's a lot more to mine here with Samson that we'll do in the future, but I just wanted to highlight the connection here. You can see that just one artifact like this demonstrates how interconnected the ancient world was. When we understand these interconnections and the wider world of the Bible, it helps give us insight into the world of the Bible itself. Archaeology helps us understand the Bible even when artifacts aren't directly linked to the Bible. We're planning to do more of these artifact deep dive videos, so let us know if you liked this one and let us know what you want to see us talk about next. Thanks for joining us for this Beneath the Bible video. If you liked what you saw, be sure to give this video a like and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. You can also follow us on social media, on Twitter and Facebook at Beneath the Bible. If you learned something new today, take a minute to share this video with your friends. And until next time, keep digging.